Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that sounds great. That sounds great.
Sweater.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. It's the combination. Oh, and then it's pebbles, so,
Yeah.
we used to have a steakhouse chain called, Cousins. They had these, they weren't chef Uncle croissants, but they were like this crispy, just a little bit sweet and so I would go with just one regular one.
I need to double check that.
Morning.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
You're doing okay?
I have a
Yep.
friend who loves them.
I know I goofed off a little bit too much during the holidays.
Yeah.
But I can afford now.
And it's right in there.
There.
In the office, isn't it? But it isn't open for lunch except maybe Friday or
My experience of
Saturday.
the Y is that all the resolution areas, they don't show up. You can always tell.
And so that's because I don't go to steakhouse very often.
We joined,
It's not
but
something
I
I want to
haven't
do.
been to one.
It's not that.
It's not a real convenient.
Something else, steak, I thought somewhere.
Well, I lived in Midtown, so it's perfect.
You go to that. So
The near, the new one. And they have one up Midtown.
That was an event, you know?
Well, they
Going
got-
out to eat somewhere like that?
It's over by Halliburton.
We had a really nice
Yeah,
steak
mhm.
called
I haven't been to that one, I need to go adding more.
yeah, it's, we visited it before.
Not a chain, it was a much
Not-
percent.
Not a whole lot.
Little way to the end of the trail.
It's very family
Oh.
oriented. So if you have kids, um, the near,
And they have great order.
I've actually haven't been in Midtown.
Oh, it's very
Is it?
And I'm gonna be.
I noticed they've been adding more
I mean, it's like
activities.
fresh. Swedish meatballs.
It works for me, but I would, there are times like, I mean, some.
Did I?
They have their singing.
Yeah.
Dogs, the kids. They go
I
Early
don't
morning.
remember,
before
but
they
I
show
think
up.
it's that week that I'm.
Oh, right.
Good morning.
Morning, Larry.
How are you? Getting it squared away a little bit?
Yeah, I had some more work done.
Hopefully
there's a lot of stuff.
They have
Did they crack?
And it's in the.
No,
It's in the same building with the.
yeah, they didn't have to graft, but in order to close it all up, you know, they have to cut all the way down here.
And some other places,
order to-
they have all the brand stuff.
Get it all work, I guess.
So she found
Over 100 stitches.
Makes you look good. I'm working my way there.
Yeah, only on one side though.
Were you awake for that?
Yeah.
Ribbon
I
cutting.
mean, you're all, well, that's considered commercial side, is the lidocaine, because he had done all the work on one day to 5 o'clock, from 8 to 5. And then he said, well, I don't have time to close your eyes.
What?
So I'm gonna have to just bandage you up and come out tomorrow.
Well,
You know,
At which point, the next day, you know, all the lidocaine is going up.
exactly.
So then you have this gaping wound, and then they have to get needles to stick in. Like 30 needles to numb it up.
To numb it.
Yeah.
Stage.
That was the second.
What?
I'm gonna get a root canal when I overcame.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. I just can't even imagine sitting still too. Is that going on?
About the study,
Yeah.
and the other one actually talks about,
Two of them.
talks.
I didn't know you said emotion when I was a teenager.
Yes.
Oh, I remember why.
Yeah.
That was not cool.
This is not cool. Yes, not cool.
at least
You have to shovel anything.
I know.
Yeah, you did
It
notice
was no
it.
big deal.
Sun outdoors is good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
But about
With that old oil log.
It was,
Make it
it was
Yeah.
just zinc oxide or coconut oil.
Yeah.
We used the Tropicana, that was nothing but oil.
Oil, yeah, exactly. Exactly. I've had one right there, which happened right before I was at my high school reunion. But
This thing is so old, you can't read all of it.
pendants.
Obvious.
The outside.
Yeah. I usually do like
And we just scroll to the last
perimeter
page where the
pendants
schedule is,
or
because
center
we
points
meetings
pendants,
coming
because
up
I
in
don't want it to
January.
go
Okay.
dark like it did one time a couple months ago.
And then you push them back
Yeah,
again
and
and
get
get
it all
it.
over.
Perfect, okay.
I'll pull it over here so you can stand between.
It is, it's a
I'll be
virtual
Robin
meeting,
Hood.
it's the first introduction, you can see some of the financials, and that's an option. The infrastructure meeting next week is where it would be good for you to be there. And I'd send you some background information that we had, kind of start wrapping our head around. You know, are we gonna be disproportionately, or our customers disproportionately gonna be paying more?
Right.
That's right. I think the answer is.
Good, how are you?
Yeah. I think that's next week.
Yeah.
That's gonna be, a little tough on me, I think.
Okay. We're starting to get into the nitty gritty.
I think the honeymoon is over.
Amazing.
Let us know when you're ready for us.
We doing a virtual thing?
Yeah, it's virtual and it's optional for you.
Well, every time we said it's optional, I get over to Brunswick County about 2 hours later, you go, I'll be in the meeting. I'm like,
And tomorrow's optional, next Tuesday, we're gonna finalize the infrastructure needs, and that's a good one.
okay,
I'm gonna take you close.
all right.
Let us know when you're ready for us.
We might need the deputies more than y'all.
Get into the New Testament. I love it.
You saw how quickly
I know, but it's like,
we don't have anything.
I did notice that. I did notice that. That was very,
What now?
There's also stuff,
You in here?
no,
You in here or something?
no.
Well, it's just cold. I just, yeah. Hats off to you. I can't do it. I get too cold. I'm gonna wear my boots. Mary, you can't leave us.
Leave you.
When did you return? 6 months?
Yeah.
Going to the game tonight?
This year.
Be a big
It's gonna
game.
put a lot of pressure on teams on the long range.
You have a great ability to phone stuff in. Good.
I don't know who's gonna take over on that committee.
That kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. Them at the beach and stuff. Kid that's working for us, he's like a child. He's like, yeah, I saw it. She gave one to me. Her in the bikinis and stuff like that. We're not getting bikinis. I'll take the one with the dogs. Probably the Hutton Calendars down in that county. You get the pastoral scenes, or you get the bikini calendar. The hunters.
Haven't seen
You need a motion to excuse Mr. Porter?
So moved.
So moved, can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to the adoption of the agenda. Motion to.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that one. Sorry. Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, and, Dr. Cannon, minutes.
The minutes of our last meeting are included in your folder, and if there is no discussion, we will move to adopt those, approve those.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And on to public comments? No public comments today? Okay.
The folks from Rock Hill are here in case y'all have questions.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, we do need to pull items 1 and 2 for some clarifications, but if I can get a motion to approve 3 and 4.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Frank, would you go ahead and present 1 and 2?
Yes, thank you. So, item number 1 was a $3,241,475 construction contract award to Carolina Civil Works. This is for work in the at the Porter's Neck Market Street intersection, very busy intersection. This is access to Edgewater Club, Figure 8 Island, and then Market Street. You've got Lowe's over here. We identified sewer insufficiencies back in 2021. This is a project to replace manholes, relocate these force mains out of Porter's Neck Road, reconfigure the gravity network here, and put a CIPP cured in place liner in the existing 18-inch pipe. This is all run through the Finance Committee and was recommended for the consent agenda. Since that time, we've been unable to finalize easements. There are 2 easement areas needed along Market Street. Just a portion up here where the gravity line adjustments will be made, and along this area here where we'll be relocating some force mains outside of Porter's Neck Road. Yesterday, we were able to come to a verbal agreement with both the Walgreens and the underlying property owner. The Walgreens leases this space. We originally had an agreement from the property owner. They wanted to confirm that Walgreens was okay with the easements. We have verbal agreement on that, but the final document has not been executed or recorded. So we just wanted a clarification and to revise the recommended action to, upon recording of all necessary real estate documents, authorize the executive director to award the contract.
Go ahead, Mr. Dow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Frank, I know in the discussion also, something that caught my ear was the right turn lane coming down Market Street, heading north on Market Street onto Porter's Neck. That will necessarily be closed down for a considerable amount of time while this work is being done. I just wanted to highlight it for those people in the public who are here or listening. That's, could you
Yes,
review
sir.
that part of it?
So back a little over a year ago in the right turn lane right here in the curb line, we had a sinkhole that formed. The gravity sewer in that area is over 20 feet deep, and it was undermining the soils, and the road was caving in. So we were able to get in there and do a trenchless patch on the inside of that sewer line by entering the manhole, installing a fiberglass sleeve and blowing that up and letting it cure. Since that time, we've done a condition assessment on this part of the gravity system, and much of this gravity line. Decided we needed to make some improvements there. There will be closure of this road for up to an 8-week period from this access driveway through this access driveway to the corner here. Both of these roads will not be allowed to be closed at the same time. They'll be right in, always access to one of those roads. And then we'll have 1-lane closure on this Porter's Neck Road for up to 3 days. The total project is expected to last 3 months, and it's expected there'll be 8 weeks of overnight work included during that time.
When is the start date on this?
The start date is going to be in about, I'm going to say we're going to actually get the notice to proceed out on this within 3 weeks.
Right, so by the end of January, early February.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and the next item that I have is a corresponding consultant phase services or construction phase services award. McKim & Creed designed these improvements, and this is for construction administration and construction inspection services during the construction period in the amount of $131,400. There's no sense in authorizing this unless you authorize the construction project. So the recommended action for this item has also been revised to, upon obtaining all real estate documents for the project, authorize the executive director to execute the amendment.
We need a vote on the first one too.
So we need a motion and a second on the first action.
I move the first. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any additional questions on item number 2? Okay, a motion and a second.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Frank. Okay, that's it for the consent agenda. Moving on to new business, administrative reports with the attorney's report.
I do not have anything today.
Moving on to executive director's report.
So under the executive director's report, we have the key indicators report, we have the safety report, the environmental report, and the strategic plan update. I would ask for those first 4 items if there are any questions that we might answer.
Thank you. Ken, just a quick note so I can continue to educate myself. On the key indicator report on page 64 and 65, it's the north side and south side wastewater treatment flows. The north side is trending down and the south side is trending up. Just a matter of the amount of work that's been done to control the I&I, the infiltration. Well, it seems counterintuitive that the two ought to work in tandem because we live in the same geographic area. Maybe.
Why don't we ask Mr. Vandermine to come forward and offer some thoughts?
Thank you.
Good morning. Very good observation, Commissioner Zappel. Normally, the north side flow would tend to be higher than the south side flow. We do have the ability in our system to divert flow, release some flow from north side to south side and vice versa. Back in October, we had to do some work at one of our pump stations over at Bradley Creek that normally sends flow to north side. As a result of that work, we had to divert some flow to south side. That work was completed last week, and the flow has been diverted as of Monday back to north side.
Great. Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. Thank you. That was all.
So on page 11, just the new meter installations were still really low. Is that backlog? Anything changed? Any information on that?
Well, we have a number of meter replacements where a meter has failed at an existing location that we put on hold because we've yet to acquire the 1,400 plus advanced meter units that we ordered starting all the way back in June. We are getting these manual read meters, and we've been placing them judiciously at new locations and replacing certain locations. But this is a consequence of the difficulty in the supply chain to get the meters.
Right.
I do expect when we do get our large order that you'll see that a spike in meter sets.
We're just still on hold waiting for those.
Right.
No, okay.
For example, we're not setting irrigation meters.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions for those 4 items? Then hearing none, I would like to briefly go over item number 5, which is the policy analysis for the extension of services to existing neighborhoods. So as you may recall, on November 9th, we had visitors from the Rock Hill community, many of which are here today, that came and expressed concerns around PFAS groundwater contamination. And some of those citizens also expressed concerns around failing private well and septic, separate from the PFAS contamination issue. Last year, November 2021, Secretary Beiser extended the protections of the consent order to New Hanover County. That created a sequence of events where private well owners would be notified by Chemours of the opportunity to have their private wells tested for contamination. And that is an ongoing event, and some private well owners are getting notices back from Chemours that contamination has been discovered in their private wells. This is an overlapping policy issue. So when we go back and look at it, there's two policy issues that we look at. One is the traditional challenge of extending water and sewer services to existing communities that do not have them. And then layered over that is this new condition of contamination being discovered, PFAS contamination. So in looking at those two policy areas, we first look back and see what prior boards have to say. In 2013, after an extensive process, this board adopted a comprehensive growth policy that looked at all types of growth, including consolidation, wholesale bulk sales, growth from development, and the extension of infrastructure to existing communities. That growth policy speaks to a petition process where communities would come forward and petition for extension, and there would be an analysis of that petition with costs. And at the time, in 2013, our board had some policy tools. In particular, it had a debt recovery allowance, a theoretical amount of money that this organization could bring to solve such problems without raising rates on existing customers. This policy was used in the Marquee Hills and Heritage Park projects. 2015, we saw some changes in general statutes. Particularly, this organization and other authorities lost the ability to require connection. That was a very important part of the original policy. We also changed the way we calculated system development charges. And that and changes in our financial policies between 2013 and now have impacted the way we might be able to calculate a debt recovery allowance. So the way we read the policy now, we don't believe it can be enforced as written. Now, layered on top of that is this unusual situation with Chemours. The consent order offers 3 resolutions, remedies, to private well owners who have been notified that there's contamination in their well. If it is Gen X, above 10 parts per trillion, then there is a process that evaluates first the connection to public water supply, if available. And there's a business case analysis completed And if the business case requires connection, then Chemours begins a connection process on behalf of the customer. And the customer then would also receive $75 a month for 20 years to pay for a water bill. If it's not Gen X, but one of 11 other PFASs identified in the consent order, then there's two other remedies. If any of those 11 others are above 10, then the property owner is offered 3 under-the-sink RO units. If, in the opinion of Chemours, it is more cost-effective to connect that person to the water system, then they may do it, but that decision lies with Chemours. Solution number 3 is if any of 12 include, the 11 PFAS that are part of the consent order plus Gen X, if they all add up to 70 or more, then again, the property owner is offered 3 under-the-sink RO units. And they may be connected to water supply if it's more cost-effective to do that. In those last 2 solutions, the property owner is not offered the option of having their water bill covered. We are also finding a 4th case. In this testing, there are PFAS that are showing up that are not part of the 12 covered under the consent order. And there are PFAS results that fall below either 10 or 70. There are no solutions offered in the consent order in that case. So our recommendation is to take, there's a gap, therefore, for county private well owners who have a contamination issue. There's a policy gap that is not covered by the consent order. Our recommendation is to take the growth policy that this board adopted in 2013, return it to the Long Range Planning Committee and the Finance Committee, and look at ways to improve that growth policy in this new environment. And we can ask in committee certain questions. How might we recalculate the debt recovery allowance, for example? And if we can't, what might be a solution going forward? How might we address, if we can at all, this gap created by the consent order? We can ask and answer those questions in committee. So that's our recommendation. Questions?
Ken, I think thanks for that analysis of that. What's really important to put in the minds of the entire board here and the community is the consent order was written in 2018.
Adopted in 19.
In 19, that our ability, the technological ability of detection has increased tremendously, plus our understanding of PFAS has changed dramatically, and we understand a whole lot more now than we did at that time. So limiting, for instance, one of your points, the Schedule C to 11 different PFAS and what their impacts are, our understanding of that on a number of different levels has really grown a lot. Just giving support to your thought that we need to take a look at our own growth policy and the issues surrounding that, including the consent order. There's somewhere in there there's going to, I believe, need to be a request to the DEQ or to the legal community to reopen that consent order or create a separate consent order that would include the increased knowledge and experience we now have with all the PFAS.
Other questions or thoughts?
So just for clarity, if I live in Rock Hill and my water was contaminated through no fault of my own, Chemours did it, basically, and I want the government to cover the cost of me getting hooked up to clean water, can I ask this board to do that, or do we have that authority, or do I need to go, does the state government need to work with Chemours to make that happen? if it's possible.
Under your 2013 growth policy, that policy imagined multiple sources of potential funding to provide water or sewer to a community that is existing and doesn't have it. And that could include funding from this board. The way that policy was enacted in the past was, in Heritage Park, for example, the authority paid for the water line extension. What's different today is property owners were required to connect and pay SDCs, for example.
Which are pretty expensive.
The policy allows for the boards to create a solution. But there is embedded in that policy a very difficult question. How much existing ratepayer funds should be dedicated to extending to existing communities? Prior boards left that decision to future boards on a case-by-case basis. But they also assumed that there would be a debt recovery allowance, which we can no longer provide, at least not as it was written. And it assumed that this body could require connection. So the policy as written, we can't offer it up as a solution.
So it's obviously that the 2013 growth policy needs to be revised, and that should happen in short order. I guess my question for the board and for the community to understand is what's our time frame from if it's going back to long range committee and finance committee to get back to the authority board to ultimately make a decision on updating that policy. Right.
I think it really depends. We're going to bring, if this board chooses to remand the policy back to committee, which is our recommendation, and we'd ask for that in the form of a motion, then we would, as staff, work as diligently as possible to work through the policy issue. But we can't predict where that might land. Prior boards had 2 dedicated work sessions over a year. And there was a number of discussions in the prior year. It essentially took 2 years to create the existing growth policy. We don't predict it'll take that long, but there are difficult policy questions to answer. We will be diligent as staff and move it as fast as the policy analysis allows.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Rucker.
To me, it seems like we're using Camorras as the default for the conversation. When Markey Hills and Heritage Park were addressed, it was around public health. You had wells and or septics that were failing, and water running into bodies of water that would cause public health concerns for many. Much like Camorras and PFAS, another public health concern. And so the county took the lead in doing that and partnering with CFPUA. We found some grant dollars. I think it was over $20 million in the end. But the concern was public health. I sent out a newsletter showing dots of all the wells and septic systems that had failed in those areas, and it was numerous. And much like Camorras and PFAS, we have another public health concern. The overall goal of the county, as we're talking with our county manager and our planning director, is not just Camorras and PFAS and just using that as a stopgap and saying we're not going to do anything until the state decides whatever. But we're also looking at our growth. And you have business leaders that are asking the question, where is growth going to happen in the county? And in my opinion, this authority needs to be more proactive in looking at growth patterns. And we know that Castle Hayne and the northern part of the county is where the growth is going to take place, because that's where the vacant land is in the county. So if you know these things, it'd be wise to prepare and start looking at how we put infrastructure in the ground to assist. At the same time, finding ways to piggyback on existing infrastructure to serve communities that would benefit from having water and sewer. We just had a planning item at our meeting Monday night where a new developer is going into an area off of Castle Hayne Road, Gordon Road, Division Drive area, and they're going to run water and sewer in there. And maybe 10 of the homes on that road will have the ability to tap into water and sewer. And I think they're going to take advantage of that. Those are the kind of growth things I think we need to be looking at. And just like the county doesn't do roads, we can also have a neighborhood petition, and if 75% of the folks say we want to have our road fixed, then we can bill them from a tax standpoint and upfront the money to pay for those roads to be fixed. So I'm looking at ways that we can think outside the box, and the county is here to help. And we can bring resources to bear as well, but I don't want us to hide around bureaucracy and say we're waiting on the EPA or the state or DEQ to decide something when you've got a partner here that partnered again back then. And I can tell you that I took the lead on that in 2011. So I'm not sure how many folks are on this board now that were on the board back then, but it was a really big deal, for our community. And the folks there, some didn't want to pay, but for the most part, everyone was very pleased to have access to quality water, but also get rid of the septic systems as well. And when you look at counties like Brunswick County, as I mentioned before, I've got a good friend who's bought a brand new home in a brand new community. It amazes me that they're not forward thinking. So you got these brand new homes that have well and septic. I could imagine buying a brand new $400,000 home and having a well and a septic tank. I can't plant trees in my yard. So for us, from the county standpoint, we're looking at growth. We're about to look at updating our comprehensive land use plan. And what does that mean going forward? We're partnering already to bring water and sewer on Sidbury Road because we know growth is going to take place there. So again, if you know things are coming, the best thing you can do is be proactive as opposed to not. I know there was a lot of concern when Mayfair was built and the city wasn't proactive and DOT wasn't proactive in putting a road in, so you had a bunch of congestion. You know these things are coming. So we really need to be thinking about real growth. And my thing is, if you build it, they will come. When I first ran for office in 2008, we talked about a synthetic TIF going up Castle Hayne Road to help spur development because we knew it was going to happen there. And again, we haven't really done those things because I think we've been more proactive at fixing stuff as opposed to looking at growth. But we're the second smallest county in the state, one of the fastest growing counties in the state, and eventually will be built out, but that area in that corridor is where growth is taking place.
In the interest of time, there's a lot that we could additionally share. Commissioner Barfield's brings forth a very important point. The county manager is already assigned staff to be part of this process. If this board chooses to remand the policy back, they will be at the meeting and carrying information back. We had a meeting with key county staff to talk about this and how we might look to Marquis Hills and Heritage Park as guidance to addressing the Rock Hill community issue and others. And then finally, you may recall last year at this time, we submitted 2 grant applications in partnership with the county for full ARPA funding to address failed septic systems. One of those communities, the Oakley community, is actually embedded in Rock Hill. So about a fourth of the Rock Hill community, we have a grant application in. We didn't get the grant in the summer. We resubmitted with new information, in particular the PFAS contamination, and we should find out in February if the grant is awarded. So we are implementing pieces of the policy that exist. The policy, for example, suggests that we should seek grant opportunities where possible to address these issues. Remanding this back to the committee will allow the committee members to have conversations about Rock Hill and how to address the problem, as well as how to apply solutions to others coming forward. And it's the fastest path that we can think of as staff to try to reach a resolution to the question.
Go ahead, Commissioner Zappa.
Thank you. Piggybacking on Commissioner Barfield's thoughts, the health department, again, was the key to the Marquis Hills issue back then. I hope that as a county gets looped in, and thank you, Ken, for getting them looped in, our staff, that we can bring members or a member from the health department in initially so they're a part of the conversation right from the get-go, because they are going to be an important lever in getting action anywhere we go. And this is a health urgency issue. So if you could add that in the conversation, I know that from this, both Commissioner Barfield and myself will approach County Manager Coudray to encourage that we get members of the health department or a member to sit in on this, so they don't have to do catch-up a month from now. Also, sometimes, even though it's somewhat arbitrary, if this board would consider the idea of putting a deadline for action, I think that might send a message to the community, whether that be March 1st, because I know that we have a certain amount of committee work that needs to go through and staff work, but in the back of my mind, and a great many of the people sitting in this audience right now, is, oh my stars, are we looking at 6 months, a year? It just seems like it's endless. If there's a way that we could put, we can always move that date, but to give us a deadline of when we expect our work to be done or to be substantially done, I think would be really helpful.
I would add that the health department was at the table in this discussion, and we will ask the manager's office if he would ensure that a representative is part of the committee meetings.
Great.
Mr. Briggs?
Madam Chair, has anyone been in the Rock Hill area to test their wells for PFAS contamination?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why they're here.
and they've gotten letters back from
And as recently as last week, we received the spreadsheet data for New Hanover County. We're trying to understand what are the overall county impacts. So as of this month, the 5th of this month, we had the testing data for the county under the process required by the consent order. But that information, I looked at it this morning, it's over 100,000 lines of data in a spreadsheet. And it's a very difficult process to pull that apart and understand relevant implications. We're going to continue to do that so we can inform the discussion.
But the people's whose wells have indicated that they have PFAS contamination, are they getting the assistance they need from Chemours? Or are they getting fresh, clean drinking water, or is there still?
No, not all.
You're not.
No.
Is there something? I know it's not, it wouldn't be convenient, but could we do something like a water station out in that area that would at least give access to clean potable water that they could pick up?
So you may recall that we do have 2 water stations, one of which we had some freeze damage, and we're putting those stations back into service at 2 parks. We would be glad as staff to investigate the concept of creating and placing others, and we can include that in the committee discussions.
Well, that would seem to be a fairly quick, low-cost Band-Aid to at least provide drinking water. Because it's an involved process to get lines put in the ground down there. So that's going to take time.
We need to think about that. I'm not suggesting that that's inappropriate. It sounds like a very reasonable solution, but we have PFAS contamination across the county. So then we need to think about what is the process of setting up multiple stations, and what are the ramifications of that. But we'll certainly take that back. We had not considered that in the solution set. That's a good idea to take back and consider.
And all of the contaminations in unwatered and unsewered areas of the county.
It is. Although this community, by happenstance, does happen to have public water in parts of it. And when the question came, is Chemours addressing the community's concerns? To the extent that we can understand that, the answer is yes, but under the constraints of the consent order. So if they are qualifying under one of those three scenarios, they would get bottled water until a permanent solution is offered. But if their test results come back with PFAS and it's below 1070, or it's a PFAS that's not covered by the consent order, then the consent order offers no solution. That's the gap.
I just want to reiterate, my thoughts are really global about the whole county. We partnered with Habitat several years ago and CFPUA to put water and sewer for a new community off of Gordon Road, Daniel Boone Trail, I believe. And I think we gave 130, 140 grand to help with that. At the same time, you got one street over, there's no water and sewer. One street over, there's no water and sewer. And my goal, again, from a comprehensive standpoint, is to look at all these pockets and donut holes and figure out how do we have a plan to cover the whole area. Because there's just so many bits and pieces where some do, some don't, and you're right by water, but you can't get to it. And, I'm not sure how we had that plan of growth in the beginning, but we need to figure out how do we fill in the holes, so to speak, is my goal.
So that's a good segue. So I think we have a proposal on the table to remand the growth policy back to the Long Range Planning Committee. So I would like a motion and a second and a vote on that.
Will that, bit of discussion, will that include the proposal for some short-term
Yes.
fresh drinking supply?
Yeah, we can take that as a separate item.
And also thinking, and this, I guess, just to be, so that we can begin looking at it, could we supply and undersink reverse osmosis, and for a charge that we might be able to finance over a period of time for these residents that can't get the help from Comores?
We need to take that question back and explore the legal foundation of our ability to do that.
Well, and that's why I'm bringing it up, so we could begin to maybe look at that.
Yes.
And to see whether there's things that we can do other than extending water lines and sewer lines out there that would bring a little bit quicker relief.
We will take that back and investigate it.
As part of discussion as well, do we want to put a goal date for action attached to this motion?
Yeah.
That's consensus, sounds like.
Long range planning is when?
Last Thursday in the month.
Do we need,
Well, if March is feasible. To come up with a new growth policy, is that what we're talking about? Or revamping it?
I assume that's what.
It's amending existing growth policy.
Yeah, Larry, I hear what you're saying, and I know that it's a larger, it's going to take some time to do it, but maybe to when we would report back to this board the actions from the long-range planning, and I'm assuming finance as well, because nothing makes sense without some sort of, money behind it, or, some sort of idea. So if we could, maybe by the next meeting, the time that we meet here, it would be the February meeting of this board, that we would have at least reports back on long-range planning and finance. That would give us a path. Larry, I'm absolutely understand what you're saying. And no, we cannot give a whole new growth policy within a 30-day period. That's not going to happen. But at least we can hold ourselves accountable to move this discussion forward at the two key committees to bring back to this, the full board by the next month's meeting. I think that sends an appropriate message.
So let's plan on at every board meeting having an update of what we've done within the past month. I think it's important to note that changing the growth policy, or whatever we do with that, is not holding up our current discussions around the Rock Hill community and those concerns. So they are happening both at the same time. We're not going to wait on the policy to figure out what because we are actively working on that. Is that a correct statement?
Well, the original
construction of the growth policy didn't anticipate
Nobody.
where we are today
Yes, right.
with PFAS and what have you. And we didn't do it in 30 or 40 or 60 or 90 or 120 days.
Yes.
2 years. So, you know, the times are different, and, you know, we can certainly report back our progress, and at long-range planning, which I sit on along with other learned people here at the table, we will drill down and not just gloss over it and make some recommendations about it.
Report similar to the consolidation report.
Yep.
It's just 5 things happening at one time, and you gotta, I mean, this is very detailed, and this has been put together, but I mean, it could be a rough summary that you're showing progress on every factor that's happening that everybody can understand.
Sounds like we're making this a high priority, and it's gonna take a lot of staff time, I think. And I think we're in agreement on that. Do we have the resources available to really dedicate to this?
We need to explore that in long-range planning, the first meeting. If we need additional resources, we'll let the long-range planning committee know by February. The growth policy did have an outside facilitator. I'm not certain whether one is necessary this time or not.
Okay, so I would like a motion to remand the policy back to committee.
We have that on.
We have.
I made the
You made the
motion.
motion?
You did.
In a second? Okay, any more discussion on the item? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all.
And do we have a way to keep the residents informed?
I think we do.
We do.
All right.
Vaughn says yes.
I would note that we have been approached by multiple communities on the topic. That's why we suggested tackling this at the policy level.
Right.
While at the same time, the chair points out correctly, we are continuing to have some conversations with Rock Hill to look for a solution particular to that community. A couple of other items in my executive director report. The first is we will be participating, to my knowledge, the first time in the parade celebrating the life of Martin Luther King Jr. on Monday. We have a parade entrance, and we have a small number of staff who will be walking in the parade. If there is an interest among board members to participate, please feel free to join us. We are meeting at 9 a.m. on Monday, January 16th at the Cape Fear Community College parking lot. I'll send more detailed information in an email after this meeting. The other bit of...
And I think you said we had a nice new dump truck that's going to be in the parade.
Yes, we do.
Oh.
If you want to walk next to the dump truck.
I was hoping we'd have a float that we could ride on and give our wave.
It is
The dump truck is a lot more exciting.
approximately 2 mile walk, a little less than 2 miles.
Get in the back of the truck.
And in the back of a dump truck.
If this is an event that we think is important, and we do think it's important to participate in every year, you will probably see us preparing things like ability for folks to ride next time. The other item I wanted to bring forward is the ribbon cutting for the Sweeney GAC facility is scheduled for February 10th at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. And it will be a rather large event. You will get invitations shortly if you've not already received them. That's it for my exec report.
Okay, moving on to committee reports. The executive committee met last week, January 4th. Those meeting minutes are in your packet for review. Moving on to long-range planning.
We did not meet.
Okay.
And have nothing to report.
Moving on to finance committee.
The minutes of our meeting on January 4th are in your packet. And I'll call on our CFO, John McLean, for our update on monthly financials.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just very briefly, this is a look, this is revenues versus expenditures through November. See, broken down operating kind of side of the house versus capital side of the house. Revenues have exceeded expenditures through the first 5 months of the year, about $630,000. On the capital side, our fund balance has actually gone down. That's because of the expenditure of bond funds. So kind of carrying those two numbers from the previous slide onto this slide, that combines to this total change in fund balance year to date through November. You're looking at expenditures exceeding revenues of about $6.1 million. And that brings our total fund balance to $92 million. You can see all of the different components that are restricted, committed, or assigned. Our unassigned fund balance is right at about $50 million. Any questions on revenues versus expenditures year to date? It's just to look at revenues. I think the picture looks good. Very pleased with this other revenues component here. We would expect that to be right around kind of the progress through the year. So this is a look at December, 50% through the year, right at about 50% on those other revenues. You can see that the water and wastewater rate revenues are a little above that, but that reflects kind of the seasonality that we get earlier in the year. This is a great story on our investment earnings. We're seeing maturities of some higher yielding investments as rates have gone up over the past year. And our SDCs always kind of hard to predict, but we are seeing a lot of SDCs being assessed through the first 6 months of the year. Let's see. This is just a look at PFAS. Just wanted to point out that we've kind of updated this to include the interest component on the debt service that was issued to come up with the construction funds for the GAC facility. So just kind of wanted to revisit that, point that out. We are kind of in our preliminary budget development phase. We are working with departments right now to come up with the operating budgets for FY24. So just wanted to give you an update there. And that's all I have. I'll answer any questions if you have them.
John, back to your first slide, the $6.75 million here. I'm assuming that's all going into capital improvement projects.
That's exactly right.
So we're finally getting the flow out there on the street, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
It's great news. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, may I offer a thought for the board?
Please.
We are also working on the CIP and have some rough numbers that we'll be looking at internally. The CIP development goes on at the same time. And in parallel to this, there's a lot going on in parallel to this. We are developing a new rate model. Looking back at the old rate model, it predicts a series of rate increases. And a significant portion, the largest portion, of those rate increases are generated by the capital improvement plan. So as we have this conversation around the growth policy, we're going to have to bring into that conversation its impact on the CIP and on the rate structure.
Ken, is that a very long way of saying we're going to need to raise rates?
Well, the model suggests that we're going to need to raise rates with no changes to the CIP over the next couple of years. You may recall that we took the model suggested 13% rate increase and divided it over 2 years. So we still have under our model 8.5% rate increase, 70% of which is to pay for Chemours contamination on the schedule to discuss. Now, it's our job as staff to always try to beat the model. And we're building a new model that we hope will be more refined and offer us more tools to be able to do just that. But we have a $500 million of capital improvement in the next 10 years. That was before we knew that the Southside project went from 153 to 249 million. And rate increases are going to be required to resolve that capital plan. Our job is to figure out how to do that and minimize operational costs at the same time. But when we have that difficult conversation, we're going to be layering on top of that this new challenge of addressing existing community needs that are currently unsewered or unwatered with municipal water. Not doom and gloom, just laying out the policy challenges.
Any kind of growth plan costs money,
Yes.
and someone's got to pay for it. So ratepayers will pick it up.
Is this what you're saying, that basically we planned on growth and it being paid for by growth?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And new construction, stuff like that, they pay the full boat.
They do.
If you modify the CIP to do some of these infill projects, they're not going to pay, and they can't pay the same. Then basically, CIP's got to be adjusted.
That is.
You're looking at that happening.
That we're looking at that being a real possibility. And keep in mind, growth does pay for growth under our system development charges. But the way that works, it's the buy-in method. So we front load, we do some of these projects, and then we are reimbursed through the growth and the SDCs.
Like consolidation, it's not the same growth as if Sidbury Road is being developed. So John McClain gets to redo all this performance again.
So a lot of moving parts. We as your staff are going to try to keep our hands on all of those moving parts and keep you aware of them.
During that formulation of the growth policy all those years ago, one of probably 50% of the conversation was about who pays for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that took, I've seen some heated conversations around this table about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that still holds true today.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just to throw a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel in there as well, there are two other factors. One is, I think you've heard clearly from both myself and Commissioner Barfield that the county is very much a willing participant, in this as we move ahead. And also some of these infill projects, Dean, are going to result in more customers. Part of what we're talking about is being able to, when we expand, the system, there are going to be other people now driven or motivated by the PFAS system. People are going to tire, as they already are. I know I hear from them, so does Jonathan. They don't like having to worry about putting their kid into a tub of water and worrying about that. Even though they've got an RO system under the counter, that doesn't cover that. They don't like having to worry every time they put a pot of spaghetti on there. They don't like that. They want our water. And I think we're going to see a lot of growth that'll come when we're able to offer that, people jumping onto our system. Just a little bit of optimism in there.
All right, we do have two information items that are included in your package. If there's any question, I'm sure staff is here to respond to any questions that you may have. Madam Chairman, we are done.
Thank you. All right, moving on to Sustainability Committee.
Yes, we actually have not met since the last board meeting, but we skipped talking about the affordability issue because it was such a long-running meeting. So the minutes are once again re-included in the packet today, and I think John's going to just give us a short blurb on some of the metrics we're deciding on around affordability and trying to meet the unmet need for.
Thank you. So we spoke at length about this on December 7th in the committee, and so I'm going to try to do my best to digest this, but just kind of rehash and kind of back up a step. Over the past decades, the cost of water and sewer has become a greater and greater percentage of customer incomes. Now that's across the country, and this community, this utility is in that same boat. Okay, and that's for several reasons. I can certainly go into why, but because of that, affordability is a very hot topic in the industry, and we wanted to put that, dedicate some effort on our part, and so we put that in the strategic plan. And so, kind of the first steps with all of the initiatives that are in the strategic plan is coming up with definitions of what we're talking about, and then ways to measure whether we're actually moving the needle. And so there was several presentations discussing different definitions, different ways to measure affordability, and the Sustainability Committee has adopted a formal definition of affordability and also a formal metric. So this is our definition here. So affordability is a household's ability to pay for basic water and wastewater services without undue hardship. And I know several of you are familiar with this metric, but kind of the traditional metric that's been used to gauge affordability is you kind of take an average residential bill and you divide it by the median household income for the community. Now that's problematic because it doesn't focus on the people who are most likely experiencing undue hardship. Said another way, it says, yes, we recognize that there are people who are lower income, and the cost of this bill is more of a big deal for me to pay for, but that's okay because there's higher income people where it's really not a big deal at all and it just averages out, right? So what that means is, we really can't use that traditional metric as a single, and that single point of income to measure affordability for our community because it does not take into account the variability of incomes across the community. So what we wanted to focus on is getting a little more granular and looking at, and of course we can't look at individual customer incomes because we don't have that data, but what we can do is we can look at, on a census tract level, and look at what customers are paying in each of the census tracts compared to the median household incomes of those census tracts. And so when you do that, you're looking at, so what this graph shows is it shows the percentage of the median household income for each census tract, okay, that the annual bill for that census tract, the average annual bill for that census tract makes up, okay? And each point is a census tract. And the census tract median household incomes are on the bottom here, and they're probably a little tough to see. But they're ranked lowest to highest, going left to right on the x-axis or the horizontal axis there. And so you can see, the big takeaway here is that the lowest income census tract that's up here on the left, they are paying 3 times more in terms of their income for the same service, for basic water and sewer services, than the highest income census tract. And that's despite having lower bills. Let's go back one slide. There's the average bill for that lowest census tract, and there's the average bill for that highest income census tract, okay? So what we want to do is we want to take this information and we want to focus on, okay, where, at what percentage of income are people likely experiencing undue hardship in paying for those basic services, right? So that's kind of the next step. Is it here? Is it further back here? Okay, so what we did is we used some data called self-sufficiency standard data. Now this is something that the University of Washington Center for Women's Welfare compiles for every county in the nation on a periodic basis every 2 to 3 years. And so what we're doing with this metric is we're kind of drawing a vertical line. This is that previous chart that we were looking at, and we're drawing a line at that self-sufficiency standard for the county. And so what we're focused on is just the bill burdens or the cost burdens, the percentage of income that our bills make up of those census tract incomes. We only want to focus on these people because these are the people that are most likely experiencing that undue hardship. And what we can do is basically just average all of those out, and we can distill that into kind of this single metric that we're tracking over time. So what we want to do after that is kind of come up with a benchmark. And so what we've done is we've assumed, okay, what would the cost burden be for a household, a theoretical household that makes the self-sufficiency standard, meaning that they're able to pay for all of their basic services, all of their basic needs, housing, transportation, food, water and sewer, right? And that cost burden is 1.7. So what we're doing here is we're taking this line that is, kind of that weighted average bill burden for all of those census tracts that are, where people are likely experiencing undue hardship and paying for basic water and sewer services. And we're trying to make that line converge down to this target percentage here. And so you can kind of translate that into a dollar amount, and it's currently about $1.1 million annually to close that gap. And so the next steps that the Sustainability Committee is going to be focused on are implementing certain activities that will close that gap. One big thing is cost control, leveraging growth, like we were talking about, to expand our customer base while keeping costs down. That will drive rates down, right? All other things being equal. We're also looking at, as Ken mentioned, and we had some discussions a couple of years ago about changing to an increasing block rate structure. Because those lower income census tracts consume less, moving to an increasing block rate structure means that those lower consuming non-discretionary users, those bills will actually go down, and it's going to be revenue neutral, and that burden is going to be shifted to those higher consuming discretionary users, right, that just happen to be higher income. And there's reasons for that. It's not really based in affordability. If you kind of recall back a couple of years ago, it's really based in cost allocation and equity, right? We have to size our plants for those higher consuming users and the peaks that they drive. If everyone consumed what a basic household needed, our capacity needs would be way less, right? So it's about allocating those costs to those customers. And then finally, I think the biggest driver or most effective tool in the toolbox will be establishing a well-funded and effective customer assistance program. So we're going to be focused in the coming months on kind of standing those things up. And I think that's a pretty good recap, and sorry if that was a little long-winded, but we talked at length about that. So any questions there?
So is there not a standard definition across the country of what water affordability is? For instance, with housing, housing shouldn't cost you 30% of your income, including utilities. So that's the standard definition for affordable housing. Is there not something like that for the whole country?
There's really not, and you asked the same question that Councilman Waddell did. There's no standard. There has been, kind of that traditional metric that just takes that median household income for the entire service area. But we talked about that there's problems with that, and then the benchmark that they use, that 4%, wasn't really. It was more based on financial feasibility to do improvements that were mandated by a consent decree for a utility that had a bunch of SSOs, that kind of thing. So that 4% benchmark that said, oh, hey, if the average bill divided by the median household income for the entire service area is under 4%, then bills are affordable. That 4% wasn't really sized or intended to be used to actually measure affordability. So in short, the answer is no, and of course every community is different. And what the good thing about this metric is it's really reflective of our community. We're looking at the self-sufficiency standard for New Hanover County. We're looking at actual data, for our census tracts within our service area. Those are variables that obviously vary from community to community, county to county, state to state, and so. It took a lot of research, but yes, that's basically the underlying problem, is that there is no singular, generally accepted measure of affordability that is not problematic from that income variability standpoint. Mm-hmm.
John, are you aware of, let me back up. Part of the problem is the bill that goes out to our customers. We only represent one portion of the bill. The other part is for trash services and stormwater services that the city provides. Is there a similar conversation happening at the city level? Because we're going through a tremendous amount of work trying to figure out how we can control our costs of this, yet I'm not aware of any discussion that would have address the other half of the bill, or the other 20% or 30% of the bill that's going out there. Because we go through all this and the customer's still faced with the fact that they have to pay that bill, and the frustrating part from our side is when the money comes in to pay that, the city gets paid first, no matter what we do.
That was agreed to by the city and the county.
Yeah, yeah.
Also, if I may, Commissioner Zappel, you're talking about water as a right versus trash and trash pickup, basically.
Yeah.
These should be weighted in two different ways.
I actually 100% support what you just said, and if I could rephrase it in a different way.
Yeah.
Think about, I'm a single mom, I'm barely making my bills. I can only pay half my water and sewer bills, so I can't afford to pay my bills, so I get my water cut off because I can't afford my trash bill.
That's it.
Kind of a way of thinking about it, which to me, I think it made sense when y'all did it. It was a very efficient way to get the bills out. But I think it's time to have a conversation, since we are trying to get to the point where we're not
talking about water here, John. We're not talking about solid waste and trash. That's another whole discussion. The only thing that the CFPUA is doing is handling the billing. Now, if you want to come down to the city and talk to us about our trash, our solid waste rates and stormwater, have at it. But that's not a discussion for here.
Well, we are part of the intergovernmental agreement, so we would bill for you.
And anything that we change, the city and the county must agree to it. And I'm open to that.
No, that's what I'm trying to do.
I'm telling you, we are very cognizant of our rates, our solid waste. We bought side load trash compactor, trash trucks last night.
Yeah.
It's going to decrease employees, and it's going to be a savings there to operate our solid waste pickup. And our stormwater, we've got probably $500 million worth of stormwater projects that need to be handled in the corporate limits. And we have very meager percent increases from time to time to handle that. So if anybody wants to come down and let's talk about reducing that, come on down.
Oh, and I absolutely, I take no issue with how the county decides that or the city decides that. What I'm concerned about is at the ground level, what happens to our customers is if they can't pay their whole bill, they sometimes get their water cut off.
And that's why we're studying about reducing the actual water portion that we control with this body here.
Right.
They're separate. They're completely separate. Well, they go on the same bill, and they require, if you're reducing the affordability component or increasing the affordability component here, ultimately it's working towards the same goal that we're trying to do.
When somebody has their water service disconnected, solid waste continues, trash pickup, and stormwater services continue. They're not cut off.
Yeah, you can't cut those off.
Yeah.
But
so the expense still there to the city.
No, your trash is stopped.
Trash.
Pardon me?
Trash pickup.
They don't have an account.
No, if your water gets turned off, trash services
No,
stop.
sir.
I'm telling you, Charlie,
Okay.
I've had it
It's not-
done. I've
It's
had it
not
done.
supposed to, but.
It
um,
does. I've had some neighbors whose water service was turned off. They won't pick up their trash. I've had to take their trash and put it in front of my house.
Now, I will say
before it
this,
gets
if
picked up.
they put large item pickup out there and they have to call 341-7875, they look to see if there's an active account, and if that account's been just interrupted, I would hold, you would probably be correct on that. As far as picking up weekly trash?
It's weekly trash.
Okay.
I guess what I hear Jessica saying is that from the customer standpoint, you can't pay one or the other, you gotta pay both. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. Yeah.
That's simple to understand.
And if you can't pay both, they both get cut off.
Right.
The stormwater does
Well,
not
at least
get
the
cut
water
off.
gets cut
No,
off.
you're right.
You can't really cut off.
Yeah.
It's kinda hard to cut off stormwater. 'cause
You got, and your wastewater, sorry, your wastewater.
Yes.
Your wastewater.
But there's not a solution at this table. You're talking about,
Right.
you're talking about usage and changing block usage. That's a solution that can be done at this table. Everything else you're talking about are fixed rates. There's nothing that we can do here at this table, so.
Well, I think the commissioners.
I
asked
get
the
what you're
question.
saying,
The
but-
question was just, we're working on the
The
rates.
solution for us
Does the city
relies
have an
on the
equivalent
rates.
effort that looks at their rates as well? I think that was just the question,
Yeah.
not,
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's exactly right. Is this whole affordability question
Yeah, we don't
is
wanna
much
be
larger
breaking
than,
our neck.
and we've put, dedicated an enormous amount of thought, effort, and staff time to come up with incredibly complex and detailed measures and metrics that we can measure it by. I just hope in the conversation that the city level is also, because it's a problem that impacts our customers. I'll leave it there.
Well, and actually, my question, we're not gonna decide it today, but I wanna take it one step further and say, does it bear relooking at this original agreement? Does it make sense in the context of the idea that we're trying to figure out how not to cut people's water off? It's a basic service. And does it make sense that we don't have some sort of an arrangement where if a customer can make a partial payment, or if they're at the crossroads where their water's going to get cut off, could we have some sort of arrangement with the city where we say, can you work with us on this so we can keep this person in water? They can afford their water. They can only afford half of our bill. Can we let it be the water? And can we? So and this is a question I just want for everybody to have it in their minds. Maybe that's something that we need to look at with the city at some point. Thank you.
right, I think that's it for sustainability.
Yep. Thanks, John, very much. Appreciate it.
Moving on to Communications Committee.
Communications did meet, unfortunately I was not able to be there, I was being a Santa Claus that day. But the discussion was around having a customer satisfaction and brand perception survey done. And I'm gonna let the face and the voice of CFPUA give us an update on that. Mr. Vaughn.
So the Communications Committee approved contracting with a firm for our first customer satisfaction survey. That's been with the Finance Committee, which approved the contract payment for that contract. It was about $30,000. So we're moving forward with developing the questions for that survey, which will then be presented to the Communications Committee.
I think that's just, since it was already approved, it's just an information item for the board. FYI.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think that's it for committee reports, consolidation study update.
The project activity reports in the packet. We've got our first financial pro forma workshop tomorrow. And then next Tuesday, one of our final infrastructure workshops. So things are kind of coming together in the next month or so. Be putting numbers to paper.
So on the schedule, it's got a CFPUA town board project update in February. Is that before our next board meeting or after? Or?
Not sure.
We've got to place that on the calendar.
Okay, so it hasn't
But
been.
we do need to have a workshop or integrate it into the existing board meeting, an update on where we are for the consolidation and some key decisions that have been recommended.
So that if it's not at the next board meeting, we'll have a separate meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Just had a quick question. Deans, Larry, have there been any major sticking points identified or pushback points from the town of Wrightsville Beach?
Us.
The next set of meetings, we have each established positions.
Yeah.
The next set of meetings will then show where there might be some points of contention.
Next Tuesday, the infrastructure workshop, I think would be really important.
Great.
Where all the stuff that staff has been working up over the holidays and all the different opinions and positions are all kind of come together.
Look
So
forward to
so
hearing
that we
that.
can put it
Yeah.
in the pro forma.
Got it. Thanks.
All right, anything else for committees? All right, moving on, any old business? I think just FYI, everybody got a calendar. Would you like to say anything about calendar?
You got somebody looking to meet you?
This is our first
Yeah.
year doing this. We got more than 20 submissions from local
Yes.
students, their original artwork. We're excited to do it again next year, get it out to even more schools. Let me know if you have any questions about it.
They're really, really cute.
Can I just write him a check?
Yes, third reprint.
Really cute.
Well, there we go. Positive and transforming voice.
Rock and roll, 9
Any other meeting
Same
items?
thing. Write on that.
All right, no closed session, correct?
Oh, no, I know.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. All right, everybody have a good Wednesday.
Not even part-time. I mean, it's